think overall there's two problems at work here. One is a lack of interest, and one is an overall level of ignorance. During the communist era in the Soviet Union, people were not taught about what was actually going on. So when the Soviet Union collapsed, there was no going back and reteaching the majority of people who had passed through the educational system. So then even the teachers themselves, who had been raised and educated during the Soviet era, now found themselves as teachers of the new generation, but they were not being retaught what truly had happened. So the new generations coming through the educational system is being taught by a group of teachers that themselves had never been taught truly what has happened, because they themselves were raised under periods of ignorance and false information. So this leads to a dearth of knowledge, or this kind of incredible amount of ignorance about what happened. The second thing is there is a deep level of apathy among the Russian people. The older generation and the kind of middle-aged generation don't care in this socio-economic situation to go back and reflect upon what had happened to them in the Soviet Union, what the true nature was of the Soviet era. They're much more concerned with contemporary events. They're concerned with their own lifestyle. Will their children be able to go to college? Can they purchase an apartment? Can they purchase a home? New automobiles? So there's a great concern for material life and such at this point, which is totally understandable. But at the same point, these reflections upon what had occurred in history, the truth being exposed, is not something many people even care about much. And if you look at public opinion surveys, people such as Joseph Stalin come up as very popular historical figures. And again, this is related directly to this apathy to go back and address that ignorance, to teach people about what truly had happened. And the government itself is complicit to some degree, because they issue documentaries and videos and television shows to give their version of history. And it's a version of a great Russia, which had problems, but the blame for those problems cannot be put squarely on the hands of any one individual. Stalin may have had many, many faults, but at the same point, he did quite a bit for Russia, helped Russia develop into a great power. And this is the view that comes out, and in some sense is sort of a trade-off. I've lectured to college students throughout Russia, from the Russian Far East to Moscow to St. Petersburg. I enjoy doing this and getting to speak to them one-on-one in their own language, and it's something they enjoy hearing a Western point of view, which I've been told quite a bit that whatever I say is a Western point of view on whatever happened or whatever is going on in the world. It's not about absolute truth. And I enjoy talking to them about parallels between American history and Russian history. And it's become abundantly clear in recent years that the new generation of students in Russia are relatively ignorant of their own history. They're unfamiliar with the different atrocities that were carried out by the regime in different parts of the country throughout their history. And when confronted with what we consider over here objective historical facts, they dispute them. They do not know these facts, and they will argue with you, saying that, for instance, they'll argue with me, telling me that what I'm saying is a Western biased point of view. And whether or not it really is that way is a different question. And they will address Russian sources or talk to Russian scholars about these issues, because we're seen as being biased and not being objective in our research. There's different groups of scholars. There are scholars who absolutely deny many of the things that happened, or they have a different slant on it. They downplay the severity of the Russian government's attack against religion and the churches, or they dispute some historical facts. Or they say, well, that was aimed towards this particular denomination, that was aimed towards the Catholics, or that was aimed towards the Protestants, but not towards the Orthodox. And the fact is, it was aimed towards the Orthodox as well. And something like the Keston collection, which documents this, is so critical, because there is no collection like this in Russia itself. And it is our suspicion that many of the documents that we have here in the Keston collection are being eliminated and destroyed in Russia itself. We have an ongoing project of photocopying and scanning KGB archives. We have some documents from Armenia, and we have a large amount of documents from Moscow, from the Russian KGB archive. And these documents testify to the fact of what took place there. And we suspect that they're being purged and destroyed over in Russia and other parts of the former Soviet Union. They're being purged because of the version of history that the Russian government and the Russian people as themselves are trying to put forward. And there's a great divide between that version of history and the true history that is documented in the Keston collection.